Over to you, Mr. Bansal.
Hi. Hi, Samar, Amit, and Kunal. Great to have you on this session.
Hey guys.
So I have people, I would say, who are pretty experienced, people like Amit, who have more than 20 years of experience, and then we have youthful experience. I call it youthful experience. So Samar belongs to the other cadre. I'm the youngest of the lot. And Kunal, I have a special place for you because of the college you graduated from. My father happens to be an engineer from Peck, Chandigarh. And that was way back in 1967. So, I have some special memories of Peck, Chandigarh to that extent. Great. Perfect. So we have a fair mix of people. So Amit has really worked across so many years, and he happens to be a graduate from KU, MBA from KU, Samar from IIT Delhi, Kunal from PEG. And the reason we're talking today is not because of the qualification, but for what they've done in the industry over the last so many years. And our topic today happens to be innovation is the magical key. And as the landscape becomes more competitive, we really would like to understand from these three gentlemen as to what they've done, what they understand about innovation, what are their views on the same. So I would request all of you. So let's say, starting from the most experienced person, Amit, starting from you, then over to Kunal and Samar. I would really like all of you to tell the audience about who you are, what prompted you to get into this venture, the venture that you're currently in, and something about yourself to the audience. So starting off with you, Amit.
Yes, sure. Thank you. I have more than 30 years of experience in financial sector. Out of these 30 years, I have spent 23 years doing a job with 2 or 3 multinationals. I have spent most of my doing job for remittance and foreign exchange sector. Whatever network, Western Union or MoneyGram you find in entire country, that has happened under my supervision until 2013. In 2013, I left the job and started my own venture in the name of FX Smart, which was acquired by Flipkart in 2016. The PhonePe is that company. In 2016, again, I started 2 companies, one in the field of sports, business of sports, and we have 11 stores right now, which are most of them closed right now because of COVID, and one marketplace in the name of playmart.in, where you can buy the sports goods online. And one more company I started in the name of Paymart India Private Limited. Paymart is into the process of launching virtual ATM, India's first virtual ATM. In fact, we are the 5th company in the world to launch this. India is the biggest, largest cash economy of the world. And similarly, India is the largest ATM deficient country in the globe. We live in very good cities where we don't find any problem in finding ATMs, but 80% of the population, Indian population, has to travel 15 to 20 kilometers to withdraw cash. India has a 27 trillion rupees economy. India has 27 lakh crore रुपया circulation में है. Out of these 27 lakh crore rupees, 3 lakh crore rupees is withdrawn from ATMs every month, and around 7 lakh crore rupees is withdrawn from the banks by issuing checks. So in totality, 10 lakh crore rupees are withdrawn on monthly basis, either from ATM or bank branches, spent with merchants, and merchants deposit that money back into banks, and from banks that money goes to ATMs or banks branches. So that is how the circulation takes place. The 27 lakh crore rupees figure has the government has infused 6 lakh crore rupees in recent 8 to 10 months. Earlier, in pre-COVID levels, the figure was 21 lakh crore rupees. Now the government is saying that अभी गरीबों के अकाउंट में पैसा डाला है, SMEs को लोन दिया है, तो government is deficient of that money. So government printed that 6 lakh crore rupees and infused in the economy during last 8 to 10 months. So right now we have 27 lakh crore rupees in circulation. And as I said, 10 lakh crore rupees are withdrawn on monthly basis from ATMs of banks branches. That amount is going to touch to around 13 to 14 lakh crore rupees in next 4 to 5 or 6 months or by end of this year. So monthly transactions for cash withdrawal are 325 crore transactions happens on monthly basis, and it is expected that this transactions will touch around 450 crore transactions, monthly transaction by end of this year. So we are ATM deficient country. Branches are very less, only 1,80,000 bank branches for a population of 135 crore population. So I, in association with ICICI Bank, has launched a virtual ATM whereby next door shop will be converted into virtual ATM. The merchant will not require any kind of hardware. Merchant's smartphone will be his or her virtual ATM. And similarly, bank's customer need not to have any ATM card or any kind of card to withdraw cash. Bank's customers' smartphone will act as his or her virtual card. So it will be a totally cardless transaction where no ATM, no POS machine, no Aadhaar-enabled payment system is required, and next door shop will be converted into virtual ATM, and customer will be able to withdraw cash. So we have launched it on 31st January, only 2-3 months back, and have done around 1,000 transactions in the last 2.5 months. And a launch is expected to be announced in the end of May, most probably last week of May by the ICICI Bank. The launch will be announced during that period. So that is it about my project.
I am really sorry. I kind of had a bad internet connection. I had to switch over. Sorry for this. I was on my mobile listening to you. Thanks, Amit. Over to you, Kunal.
I forgot the question.
So, Kunal,
you just want us to answer. Okay.
Just one small introduction. So, we had your introduction. Anything that you would like to tell about your venture? Anything to start off, right?
Okay. I'm just a tech entrepreneur, building bunch of tech, working with people, and trying to learn and grow in different spaces. And I guess just enjoy the journey as we go along. There's no end goal in mind. The goal is just to keep enjoying the process and learning and growing in whatever we can while we are in the search of some higher purpose, which hopefully drives us and defines more the meaning of life. That's briefly me, but otherwise qualification, academics, and otherwise I've done everything they tell you in 3 Idiots not to do. Don't be an engineer because everyone in India is one. Don't do MBA then because it's a waste, and then don't work in a bank. I did that as well. And don't follow the I guess the hypes that everyone does. So I did the startups too. So done quite a bit of things. I have 40 years of experience in life of living. Hopefully trying to now learn what it was all about, and next 40 I hope I'll make it count. That's me briefly.
Wonderful. Thank you. Samar, anything from your side?
Hey guys, I'm Samar. I run 2 companies, Jugnu, JungleWorks. Essentially, they're both SaaS companies. We're trying to build a on-demand platform for companies that want to go on demand, but don't have millions of dollars to spend on tech. So yeah, briefly, that's pretty much it. And yeah, we are also I hope the COVID situation gets sorted soon in the country. Yeah, it's very, so we are all remote work right now, across the country, and just staying put at home. And on the, very excited to be here talking about innovation. But yeah, I guess there's no formula for innovation.
We'll start off with you. So that now that you mentioned about 3 companies, 3 successful ventures, right? Jugnu, JungleWorks. So my first question, Samar, in fact, goes to you. So how do you really approach innovation? What really is innovation in your mind?
Yeah, so I mean, there is this. I think there are two things that I would like to say on this. The one thing is that for me, at least, personally, I think we don't like I at least don't try to define innovation. It's more like you do a lot of bunch of experiments. A lot of them sound very stupid in the hindsight. Some of them sound very obvious in the hindsight, and the ones that sound obvious are the ones which are innovations. The other ones are just like stupid ideas, right? So I think that's how I approach it. And the good thing is that I just love doing it. Like I'm all my experiments, whether it is making a failed jam in kitchen with my daughter, or running a startup. I mean, I
Right.
do it not because I want to succeed at it, because so like my daughter tells me that Papa, like you fail most of the times, right? At everything. So I think say that's the thing, it doesn't matter as long as you enjoy it. So I think that's the definition of innovation for me. But I think as you grow later, I mean, when companies start to get slightly larger, right? You have to change the innovation definition for the company, right? So you have to like really put in a structure of making people more comfortable with experimentation. I think there's no, like, I don't think that the innovation competitions that companies, or if you go to, let's say, a Unilever or Infosys, like what they'll do is they'll run a hackathon, right? I mean, these
Right.
days that's the
Sure.
craze, like run a hackathon and that will get you innovation. I
Right.
think that doesn't really work per se, because you know innovation is always happening with experimentation and within individuals. So I think all you want to do is put a framework in the company in terms of showing success to people who experimented and did well with that. So that's pretty much it. So there's an institutional innovation, and then there is innovation at personal level.
Perfect, perfect. So I have a great answer from somewhere. As per him, it's very simple. It's actually a bunch of stupid ideas. You execute a bunch of stupid ideas, and one of them clips, and that's actually innovation. So brilliant. I'm sure, Samar, you're right. You really can't put a framework around innovation. Thank you. Thanks for your comments. So Kunal, anything about? So how do you approach innovation? Is it the same as what Samar said, or you feel there's a different approach?
Uh, Possibly somewhat similar, but my views on innovation are, I think it's a most overrated and overused and overabused term in all the startup pitches and all the corporate presentations.
Right.
Anybody who comes and tells me they're innovative, they are just faking it, or they don't really understand how the world works. Let me dumb it down for everyone. In my view, again, that's my opinion. Innovators never make money. Imitators do. Tell me one innovative company that was the only one doing it, and it was the first one at it, and it did well. Google was
So you
not the first
like,
Google was not the first search engine. Facebook was not the first social network. It is all
yes.
about execution.
Right. Right.
So just so we're clear, innovation is not needed in order to make a great business or a great or be the most successful company. All you need to do is follow the tide. Make sure you are not missing out when the shifts are happening. Means you don't need to
Okay.
be the first one. It's okay to be second, fifth, or 10th. That's okay, as long as you're able to execute better than everyone. Look at the biggest companies around. Geo is not the first telecom company, but they are just following the shifts and patterns better than others. They are moving faster, way ahead. And if they don't, then they become like Kodak and they shut down. They are not moving from print photos to the digital photos, for example. For them, for large corporates like Kodak, as an example, now that it's come to mind, they will run innovation challenges. They were the first one to build a digital camera with Apple, but none of them actually migrated towards that pattern, and both lost out.
Right.
And Kodak definitely lost out big time, right? So innovation, I think, innovators do not make money, imitators do. It is all about execution. But equally, the job of the leaders, all the entrepreneurs, and anyone who's interested in this, the job is to make sure you know when the patterns are shifting. If in COVID you're not prepared for work from home, you're not thinking mobility, you're not thinking digital, you're gonna miss out. Clearly, it's gonna be more an online world than it was before. It is gonna be less an offline world than it was before. So there are obvious patterns that happen. Just follow them for sure. if you can lead some of them, great, but you need not be the first one. And being first one actually is the most expensive thing, because you are the one who's experimenting, losing out, while others learn and execute it better than you. That's one on innovation, execution, and the money that follows, or the businesses that succeed. Secondly, of course, imagine the world, think again what you want to do, but do it with for the right reasons. Many people try to innovate in order to make money. That should not be the goal. The goal should be, like, for example, you want to learn, you want to challenge yourself, you want to experiment, you are willing to fail but still learn and grow, etc. There are many other reasons for which you may want to do innovation, but success in business is not one of them. It may overlap if you're lucky. Otherwise, it's okay to just follow the pattern. If you're just talking business, innovation should not be considered a big deal. It should be maybe thought about, follow the patterns, the big shifts, but do not be too innovative, or do not talk innovation too much. Otherwise, there are jobs that people have in the big corporates and banks as well, chief innovation officer, and probably the most waste jobs, I would imagine. I don't know what they're meant to do besides doing the usual stuff. So that's my 2 cents on innovation.
Perfect. So we have a pretty different perspective, I would say. So as per Kunal, what he said, innovation is all about understanding the shifts, the tectonic shifts in the market space. So a brilliant perspective. I mean, he says innovation is not really being the first one, but being able to understand the shifts and being able to adjust according to those shifts. So we have a brilliant perspective, definitely. So Amit, so now that 2 so-called youngsters, relatively youngsters,
they are well experienced. They are well experienced, although youngsters, but they are well experienced, well wise.
Perfect. So Amit, as per you, so you have more than I believe, as you said, about 3 decades of experience. So as per you, how do you approach innovation? You've had some brilliant product launches in your career. So how do you?
Yes, very, very traditional answer. Whenever you want to address some kind of problem, you want to solve some problem, the innovation happens. Whether you are first mover or you are, like Kunal said, 15th company, when you try to solve the problem, the innovation happens. चाहे वो जल्दी start हो, चाहे वो 15 साल लें, लेकिन innovation happens when you try to solve the problem. This is what I consider.
Perfect. So looking out for a solution to a problem is where innovation steps in. So that was a brilliant answer. Thanks, Amit. So Kunal, now I'm kind of tempted to come back to you, because for the reason that you mentioned about innovative companies not making too much money, or I would take your other perspective when you said that it's not really important to be innovative to be making great money. So I mean, 2 different perspectives what you spoke about. Now I have one question for you. Is it really difficult to innovate? Because you said you need not be the first one, but is it, in your mind, is it really difficult to innovate?
Innovation needs, I think, a lot of unlearning of the world we see around us. We are used to seeing the world in a certain way. We are used to imagining the world in a certain way. And many times, because of our presumptions, assumptions, and learning, more learning we get, less innovative we become, because we are just taking things for granted. I'll give you an example, and this is less to do with companies, but just something I learned recently, which I found very interesting. Space and time are 2 things which all the scientists for the last 300 plus years have been taking for granted, that there is space, there is time. Now, within that, how does physics work? How does universe work? How does consciousness work? Various things they've tried to address. And one thing they never were able to address was consciousness. That what is consciousness? How does it come? How do you address it? And turns out there is one of the scientists, Donald Hoffman, who's come up with an idea that the space-time assumption we've taken all along for every single theory so far, that is the problem. Because we take it as an assumption that space and time around us exists. And that causes us to now look within the space and time for all the answers, whereas the consciousness's answer lies outside the space and time. He said, take that assumption out. And he's put out a great thing and proving that we are in a simulation and many other things if you believe in it. But the idea is that because we are so deeply involved in the world and we assume it as is, it's not easy always to think big and think from a fresh, childish perspective, let's say. That's what's needed to innovate, right? If you really want innovation, I mean, don't tell me that, you were doing something, we were doing this session in a conference, now we are doing it on a laptop with internet. It's innovation. Sure, it is an incremental improvement, borderline innovation, but it's not the end of the world. It's just slow process and, incremental and all. But to think big innovations, I think many times we have to unlearn a lot. And that's what most people are not used to. They would not like to be challenged on their assumptions. They would not like to undo the years to decades of learnings that they have. So that becomes a problem. As long as you can do that, you can be open to learning anything, be open to unlearning everything. You can imagine the world in a new way. But remember, we are all way more connected than we understand or comprehend well or appreciate well. We have our brain, some action, some neurons, some things I'm speaking, some things others are going to speak. We're going to learn and bounce off ideas of each other. It's way more connected than we actually appreciate. And through that, I think eventually new stuff does come out, as long as people are not living with the base assumptions and willing to unlearn. I think that's a challenge which most people face. Hence, they will always end up with a little bit of incremental improvement only, which they will call as innovation. But any big ones, you have to unlearn all the assumptions, reimagine the whole world. It is challenging. It's not easy.
Perfect. As you spoke, you mentioned about the scientist. I kind of remembered a book I read by Deepak Chopra many, many years back. I believe in my I Am This, Ageless Body, Timeless Mind. I believe going forward, a lot of this spiritual talk and quantum physics are going to merge, and we're going to have some new meanings coming along.
Correct.
Perfect. Yeah. Samar, I will put the same question to you now that you're working in the SaaS space, and as with the ventures you spoke about, the cutting edge of technology that you're working with. So is it really difficult to innovate in your industry or the work that you do?
So see, I disagree and agree with Kunal, because I think the definition of innovation he puts out is such a tall order. It's tough to meet, right? So what in my personal view, I think that the incremental innovations are really what take people forward. And in his word, I think we are on the same page that people who make money, people who make a difference are actually incremental innovators or incremental improvers, right? Like I'm sure like somebody invented the wheel, and then the guy who put it on a bullock cart or something made more money, right? And the wheel maker was thinking, I mean, I was kind of like nobody would know me. I think that's kind of the sad part about it. But that's life. I mean, what can you do? Yeah, I mean, so what we think is fair enough, keep trying to innovate, or don't worry too much about innovation, the word per se. But as long, so for example, in my opinion, right, what I do is whenever I'm feeling, let's say, low, or I'm feeling clueless, I just talk to like 10 random customers, 20 random customers, right? Mostly on or like do this ask me anything kind of with customers and stuff. And I always get like 10 ideas, right, which are like my customers are giving to me. So they're not like rocket science ideas, right? But they're more like small little things that I can do. Some of them are a bit novel, somebody else is not doing it, or most of them are fairly like obvious. So I think we try to prioritize according to what what our customers would like and stuff, and some of our knowledge and on trends, right? And trends are super critical, right? So I think and then there is some collective innovation that happens, right? If you see all the metrics, all the things, like Amazon is the most innovative company in the world today because they announced most patents, they announced most updates and stuff. It is true also to a certain extent, because if you start measuring these incremental changes, the large changes, or if you see AWS, that's clearly in a large innovation, right? I mean, a company comes out of nowhere selling books, or like an e-commerce giant builds the first large cloud network or company in the world. That's very odd, right? So of course this is the unlearning which took them there, but it also is fueled by the fact that they were actually measuring or focused on these incremental changes. So I think what you can control is these incremental steps. Innovation is always easy to see in the hindsight, and like some people will get lucky with these steps going in the right direction. But I think you shouldn't think too much about it. That's my thesis. Like the idea is, don't think too much about like whether you are innovating or not. you should think about whether you are like striving for new experiments or these incremental steps or not. And if we make I come from physics, right, background. Like I was a nuclear physicist. You typically get beam time once every 5 years for like 2 hours, right? And out of that 2 hours, it was pretty sure that for 1 hour, you won't, like, something or else would go wrong, some sensor would burn out and stuff like that. And it's like just impossible to do, kind of nuclear physics, because there's just so much patience involved, right? And getting that Nobel Prize or something. In fact, my guide, who almost got the Nobel Prize in physics, and his biggest problem in life is that he didn't get the Nobel Prize. He only has like 100 patents, from IBM. And he told me that physics is more about marketing and sales than about innovation. Like this is like one of the Stuart Parkin, he invented hard disk, right? So this is that guy speaking, right? So I think Kunal is absolutely right, and it's an unfair world. Marketeers make money, innovators don't. But the reality is, if you are having fun in innovation and you're doing it, and you have a team of people who are actually commercializing it, that's when you should do it. So yeah, I mean, just keep taking the small steps. And to be honest, I don't think I've had any big steps so far. So I think, but I would still keep taking those small steps, and you should do. So keep doing that, and something will figure out or not. That's the idea, I think.
Perfect, perfect. So just adding on to what Kunal said, so as per Samar, the incremental steps are equally important. I mean, as he says, gone are the days when we'll have another, let's say, hyperloop coming in. So hyperloop is already there, right? So we'll have incremental changes. So if one hyperloop takes you to Mumbai in about 2 hours, we'll have another hyperloop taking you to Mumbai in 1 hour. So a lot of these incremental changes which will happen. And so it's like offering more respect to the word innovation. So some big bang changes will possibly happen once in a decade, but we really need to be looking out for those incremental changes or innovations. So Amit, so from you, so how would you really approach innovation? You've had a long, illustrious career. How would you approach innovation? And is it really difficult? Is it really difficult in your mind?
Yeah, it's a difficult task, and throughout my 30 years, I have spent a lot of time in traveling across the country, and I try to address the problem being faced by the masses. Like in financial sector, being in financial sector, I as on date I find 80%, more than 80% of the population doesn't have proper access to banking system. So I try to find solution for masses who are deprived of this financial transactions. There is no bank, no ATM, the internet is weak. So I try to find solution for masses. And when you try to find solution for masses, a lot of money is spent on those things. So money is spent, like Kunal said, it generally goes waste. And whenever you want to innovate, the credit doesn't go to you. So that things happen. But ऐसी जिंदगी है, that happens with everyone. Credit always doesn't go to the innovators. Generally, the followers, whoever takes the speed, who catches the speed, are able to win. That is how the life goes.
So, Amit, carrying on with this thought now, see, most of us, so let's say, have worked with some large organizations as well. Samar obviously has created his own large organization ever since he graduated. But so Kunal has worked with some of the large organizations. Amit, you worked with some large organizations. I also had the fortune of working with, let's say, Bharti Airtel or the Tatas or HCL. Now, when we were working in some of these large organizations, we had, Kunal, we had more flexibility to fail, if I would to use that word. Now you're entrepreneurs. I also handle my own organization. I believe somewhere in our mind that flexibility kind of gets reduced because of the bandwidth that we're operating in. So now, so let's say Kunal, Amit, let's say having worked in some of those large organizations wherein you had those budgets, you could really experiment, to now running your own enterprises, right? Someone to now running your own enterprises, wherein you may not want to put too much at stake. So I had this question to you, starting off with you, Amit. So, do you really think the entrepreneur's mindset really makes a difference to the kind of innovative approach that his or her company may adopt? So, having come from, let's say, a corporate background where you had more flexibility to fail, would that really rub off on your mind versus someone who's really not worked with some large corporates and is starting off on his own? Would that risk-taking ability or would that ability to innovate be different between both these kinds of entrepreneurs? What do
Yes,
you think?
yes, money backup must be there. If you have a money backup, you are flexible enough. If you don't have that money backup, the flexibility you have to manage according to the situation. So, whenever you have an innovation, a new idea in your mind, that is how when you leave the job. Out of frustration, if you leave the job, that thing doesn't happen. That goes into waste. I am of the view that flexibility happens when money backup is there. When you have good idea, money comes thereafter. But you have to spend a good amount of money, good amount of time to get the things matured. So innovation is of like Kunal said, innovation goes waste if that backup is not there. So after leaving that corporate culture, that corporate style of working, you have to mold yourself according to the business needs, according to the requirements of the new business, and the financial resources you have. You have to mold yourself according to that.
Okay, so as per Amit, yes, that flexibility, as per him, it does come down once you step out from a big corporate because of
Yes.
the availability of the funds. That flexibility to innovate may just come down. Kunal,
Yeah.
would you agree with Amit? Because again, you've worked with some of the large organizations. So,
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I agree with that, but again, different perspective. We will be probably talking past each other, but I'll just try to comment on the point you're trying to make here. My perspective is the biggest killer of innovation in large companies is the fixed salary people are getting.
okay.
The backup that is meant to be a positive for them is actually the reason why innovation never comes from large companies. Let me explain. Assume you work for General Electric. This, and I'm making this example I'm giving is almost a real one. Okay, I'm just naming some different people and different companies, but it's a real one. General
Okay.
Electric set up a unit in Hyderabad or Bangalore with 4,000 people trying to build a better, faster, cheaper electric bulb. Some bulb, okay? They achieved in 5 years time with 4,000 people, they achieved like 70% more energy saving, bit more life, bit more cheaper, blah, 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 some stuff. Then there were a bunch of 8 people who got out from the General Electric or some other company and set up their own startup, and they had no money. And they wanted to address the same problem. They didn't know what they will achieve. Will they achieve 70% efficiency or 90 or none? They achieved 99% efficiency. They built the bulb, which was 10 times cheaper. They built it in the time which was 5 times less compared with General Electric, and they built it with the number of people 8 versus 4,000. The difference was that for these startup guys, this was it. If it works, their families eat. If it doesn't work, their families go hungry. They had everything to lose. That's why startups actually make the difference, not the big companies. For the big company, how would a big company work? I'm, let's say, VP R&D. I'll go and I'll say, okay, I'm doing this. Then I'll say that, oh, you pulled my resources, or I didn't have enough people, or COVID happened, or something else happened. I'll have a million excuses. And, I know that I'll get paid monthly, so I'm not bothered. Beyond a point, I'm not bothered. It's my job. It's 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 a.m., 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. But for the startup entrepreneur, it's 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. or whatever it takes, So actually, it's like, in circus, if you see that they put the safety net beneath when you're, doing the ropes and jumping around, the moment you put the safety nets, people start falling. This is a corporate job for you, trying to do innovation. You take the safety nets out, put the startup entrepreneurs up there, nobody falls. That's the difference. This monthly salary is the biggest killer of entrepreneurship and startups and innovation. Okay, the moment you give it, nothing will be achieved. That's the simple reason why startups achieve so much, large companies don't.
Perfect. So Kunal is pretty vociferous. He says, "पूंछ में आग लगी हो तो सब कुछ हो जाता है. Monthly salary मिलती है." See, to an extent, But Kunal, now in my 2 decades of corporate experience, so I worked with an organization wherein for a year I was handling so-called, I wouldn't call any fancy surname, but I was handling their innovation portfolio. Now, if I were not to be on a monthly salary, I didn't know what. So I had 10 different projects running at the same time. I didn't know which one would succeed. But you're right. Had I been more on a variable pay, I mean, I would have strived all the more to make at least one of those projects a success. I somehow get what you're trying to say to that extent. पूंछ में आग लगी हो तो काम जल्दी हो जाता है. बिल्कुल,
Good.
बिल्कुल.
Yeah, it's just like Samar said as well. You try 10 things and you prioritize the resources. You do one thing and drop the others. So that's the prioritization you do in a startup, and then one works. Otherwise, you shut it down. Or if it works great, then you put all the resources and make it the big business. That's how Samar has evolved. Many of us have evolved. That's exactly it. And for large companies, none of those 10 projects would ever become a real business. That's the problem. They'll always have you and others replacing others, and that's just a continued cycle, but no innovation there.
Perfect. Samar, now you don't carry the baggage of having worked with so-called a very large company. I mean, we're happy that you created 3 large companies and you not having to work for a large company. But now that you don't carry that baggage, which the 3 of us did carry to an extent, right? So do you really feel the innovative ability or the flexibility gets hampered in a smaller organization because of the availability of funds, as Amit was pointing out? Or do you really feel it's the other way around?
So first of all, I actually did work for IBM for 2 months.
So I said not a very long time. Yes, that's
exactly. No, I'm not correcting you. But
I thought you were saying not a large company. Okay.
so see, I'll tell you what, when I actually went there, what I loved was that IBM, I mean, at least in the past, it used to be a research organization, right? Like all the fancy offices, and the research was completely different from commercial. So I was working in IBM Almaden. It was like in middle of a jungle, like literally a jungle, rattlesnakes, deer, what you have, every single thing was running around. People would cycle and stuff like that. It was like almost a scientist paradise, right? I mean, live in a beautiful jungle and, just work on science. And then they had this like commercial piece, which is like completely different. Like I never went there. I never knew what it was. And it worked beautifully, right? So because, and my thesis was that I eventually want to, let's say, 50 years down the line, want to build an IBM in India. That was my dream, right? I'm still like working towards it. And I think I'm still far away, but we'll get there, right? To whatever extent we can. So the idea is, I think, large company, small company, it's about the commitment, right? Some companies are committed to innovation, right? You look at Google, you look at Amazon, you look at IBM, and the moment they stop getting that commitment, like, Intel, like it was doing great, it was innovating, it was always on the forefront. The moment that, that commitment from top level kind of was not there, they started to stumble, right? Same thing, Samsung, like starting with the selling fish and now like literally the largest electronics company in the world in, some metrics and stuff. So what I would say is it's about commitment. It's not about being small company versus small companies have advantages in terms of, being able to have the top bandwidth. Like, in my company, I am the innovator, right? I mean, let's say I fail, people succeed. That's what we say. If it's success, then it's my employee's success. But if it's a failure, it's my failure, right? So I have the luxury to do that. In a large company, we don't have that, but we do have, slightly more budgets. As Kunal said, the moment you start getting a salary, you don't want to innovate, right? That's true. But, so there are pros and cons, but there have been examples where, people who were salaried, they became intrapreneurs rather than entrepreneurs, right? They would go to their people, companies and say, okay, let's spin this off. Like some of these, Heroku, such great companies have come out as spin-offs. So that model is also, now corporates have started to realize what Kunal is saying and saying that, okay, let's build intrapreneurs and, spin those companies off into small companies. So, get advantage of the capital of a large company and the nimbleness of the small company. So, like all these MBAs or all these like analysts somewhere, they're like analyzing all the world and like picking the good things from all the models. So, but again, like somebody is going to come out of nowhere, like a Mark Zuckerberg, and build something great, right? So I think to answer your question, I think small companies actually work better at innovation because they have more commitment to it. But yes, they need backing in terms of money. So I'm taking like the best of both worlds from Kunal's and answer, and kind of saying that you give bunch of money to a small company or a founder and let them be, right? If the ownership is, let's say, being owned by a large company, that's okay. I mean, or a VC fund, that's okay. But they might burn a lot of money, but and I might hate it because as a competitor, I'll say, what is going on? This is like complete nuts. But that's the reality. I mean, they are innovating at some point, right? If you see like the kind of innovation all these large burn driven or entrepreneurial companies or even intrapreneurial companies have done, in 10 years time, I think the impact is positive. Is there a lot of disruption in between? Yes, but you can't help it.
Perfect. So we have a pretty balanced view, and some of the reason you mentioned about this term on entrepreneurs, right? So incidentally, I run a signature program on entrepreneurship for a couple of organizations. So that's what I intend to inculcate in some of these large organizations. Yeah. So it's been a very
now. So I think you are on the point here. What you're doing is working really.
no. So again, with my 2 decades of experience, I just try to bring in those points which I, as an employee who was not thinking or what I should have thought about, so I can bring in that experience when I kind of design some of these programs. So it's been wonderful talking to you. So as just to summarize, I mean, we've had some great perspectives. So innovation is all about problem solving. Innovation is all about some incremental efforts as well, right? It's not really a big bang theory. And a small company or large company ultimately boils down to the commitment that you have. But yes, to keep innovating, you should not be innovating just to make money. As Kunal pointed out, the imitators make a lot more money than what the innovators do. But it's really important to stay relevant, to see those tectonic shifts, to be there in that space, in that crucial space when the time demands of you. So it's been a great discussion with all three of you. So Kunal, Samar, and Amit, thanks a lot for being in this session. We'll be back to Aisha. Thank you. See you.
Catching up. And
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful session. So much to learn about not just innovation,